Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Friday, November 13th Database Committee meeting. I'm Jennifer Jacobson Wood, and in the room here at RSA Rails, we have Rhonda, Liza, Erica, and Miranda. If everybody could introduce yourself in the chat room and say where you're from, that would be great. What do I do? Can I see the chat? Can I see the chat on this computer, Erica? Oh, okay. Nancy from Galesburg Public Library. And then it looks like Pat from Morton. Oh, they're showing up too fast. Will it show up here? Yep, it should be down there. Oops. Okay. Technical difficulties, minor technical difficulties. Let's see.
You can tell this is our first time doing it.
Yes. Okay. I'm trying to get to where they, okay, 10 a.m., here we go. We have Pat Heck from Morton Public Library, Melissa DeVerger from Blessing Health Library, Amanda Gray from here, Lori Holler from Washington, Rebecca Seaborn, Farmington Area Public Library, Barbara Love, Kiwani, Amy Gould, Kiwani.
Okay,
everybody?
Great. So if you haven't typed in yet, go ahead and do so, but I think we'll move forward with the agenda. That way we're hoping to have some time at the end for questions. So if at any point during the webinar you can't hear us, go ahead and give us a text chat. Oh, hey, Debbie from Dunlap. Go ahead and type in the text chat at any point if you can't hear. And also type in if you have questions. We'd like to try and address them along the way, but if not, we can save them to the end. And we do have Liza here keeping an eye on the chat, so go ahead and type in questions as you think of them. Before we dive in, I wanted to show you the agenda because I realized I posted this meeting on the listserv and I didn't share the agenda with you. So let me show you where that's posted. So on our RSA homepage, alsrsa.org, the left-hand menu has board committees groups. If I click that, and then if I go to the Database Management Committee, we'll scroll down, a little bit. So notice here there's an agenda. Okay, so we've done number 1. We'll move to number 2, a couple things about the cataloging restructuring update. We'll talk then about OCLC cataloging, then brief record cataloging, and then a few things. We ran out of time from my update during the September database meeting, and then we'll talk about our next meeting after that. So it's another ambitious agenda, but we'll do our best to move through it. And like I said, if you have questions, go ahead and type those in at any point. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to mention, and this actually as of Wednesday, this is changing yet again, so I feel like what I'm telling you now might be subject to change. But for those of you that have started using new cataloging logins, we have a guide to help you adjust defaults. But we're finding that depending on if you're a small library or a big library, you might not need to do that setup guide. So let me show you where that setup guide is posted. We're still recommending that you take a look at it, but we're thinking more of your settings move over in some cases than we originally thought. So the default settings guide is posted from the RSA webpage under Workflows, Documentation, and Training. We'll go to Cataloging. We'll go to Guides and How-Tos. Okay, so this guide right here, the how to check your default cataloging parameters, I still think it's a good idea to do this after you get your new login, and we're going through on a kind of a library by library basis on setting up logins. It's going to be a longer rollout than we anticipated, but we will get to you. And if you'd like to start using new logins sooner, go ahead and send me a note and I can. Uh-oh, Liza's choking in her room. But if you'd like to get started using a new login soon, go ahead and send me a note and we can have a meeting about that. But I still recommend, though, everybody who gets new logins runs through this guide just to make sure your workflows is set up as it should be. There's various wizards in here, both in cataloging and circ. But we're finding, though, for the smaller libraries that aren't Big 12 libraries, and I shouldn't even use smaller, that's not the right word. Libraries that aren't considered, we call them the Big 13, so Morton, Peoria, Pekin, Washington, Fond du Lac, Galesburg. So we're thinking that for you, we need to do some back-end configuration. Alpha Park is one of them too. We need to do some back-end configuration in our new cataloging profiles so that when you start to use your new logins, it should pull from the server those settings that you had when you were using your tech account. Kendall helped me figure out that it was it's been a configuration issue for those Big 12 libraries. So we're trying to address that, and we're thinking that's going to have to save you the work, for example, of going through and setting up a lot of these settings. For other libraries, again, I shouldn't use small, that's not the right word, but just libraries that aren't a Big 12 library. So Blessing, I think Dunlap, really anybody else, like I said, who's not considered one of the Big 12, we're thinking your settings should move over, but again, we would like you to go through this guide when you get your new login. And we're saying too, just to spot check a few of the wizards, because that should give you a good indication whether or not your settings have successfully moved over when you log in with that new login. So this settings guide, it has been revised with a couple things I'll point out here. But again, depending on if you're a Big 12 library or another library, we're thinking that this step-by-step configuration will not be needed after all. So a couple changes that have been made to that guide. So here in checkout, and these actually might not be configured by default, so these might be things to check. So if you're in checkout and you put in one of those on-the-fly brief records, if you try and scan the book and it says it's not found in the system, we recommend in this little add title helper that you have cataloging set as your default home location. That way when the book is discharged and it comes back in, it can be routed to cataloging staff to ideally be recatalogued on a full OCLC record, or a cataloging request submitted or sent to Connection if you have someone at your library using Connection. So that was the first change. The other change that's been made to that default settings guide, if you open up the items group in circulation and go here to add brief title, we ask that if you're putting in brief records for interlibrary loan items that come from outside RSA, maybe it's through Share Illinois or WorldShare, that you have, if you're using these codes for your interlibrary loan books, your default set to the appropriate ILL codes here. That way it makes it easier when you're putting in those brief records for those non-RSA interlibrary loan items. Let's see, the last change that was made, and this actually stemmed from a question from Peoria public staff, and this got us thinking that for those Big 12 libraries, there's a problem with the back-end configuration that we need to figure out. But what the question was, when Peoria staff uses call number and item maintenance, and then item search and display as well, their screen opens up here where they can do what we call the advanced search, where you can pick the type of search and maybe an item ID, or you could do a title browse or a title control number or a general search. The Default settings guide now includes instructions how to set this up. You have to go here to the search and display wizard to properties. And the thing is, you want to be logged in as super to get this setting set up. So right now I'm logged in with a tech account, so I won't be able to show you the setting to get that adjusted. But if we go back here to the defaults guide, so this step right here, so that'd be 2A, the little 2 Roman numeral below that, that tells you how to set up your default screen and call number and item maintenance and item search and display to that single search field that has the options for keyword, browse, or exact. Does anyone have any questions about that before we switch presenters, and Miranda will give you a preview of the new cataloging request form that we're working on? Okay, let's switch.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to show you the web form that will eventually be replacing the interim cataloging request procedure that you've been using up to this point, where you're sending your scans into the help desk. And this is not live yet. It's not quite ready to go. As you can see, it gives us this error message every time we try to get into it, and we don't like that. But this is what it will look like when you're ready to go. It sort of gives you instructions here about when to use the form, and then you'll just fill out all of these areas, select your library. Another reason it's not ready to go yet is some of the libraries are missing from our drop-down menu. Then you select if you've already put in a brief record, so we know that we need to overlay that when it comes in. If there's a minimal record, so 3 or an M, and then it'll ask you to select what type. So if you select a book, it'll then give you the instructions. So you have a paperback, large print, and it'll show you what you need to take pictures of, and that changes depending on what type of item you have selected. So you can see now it says front of case, spine of case, and the discs. It's musical recording. Again, it changes. Magazines change. And the way that you'll submit your photos, it'll ask you for the size of the cover, and it'll ask which method you're using to submit the images of the item. The preferred method is to attach the scans directly to this form. Oops. And you can either upload individual pictures, so you see you get multiple boxes here to upload the individual pictures, or if you've been sending in PDFs, you use your copier to scan and create a PDF, you can submit a PDF, you can submit them in like a Word file, which is the doc or docx, or you could submit all of the pictures in one zip file. So whatever works best for your library, this form will be able to accommodate that. We're hoping to get this ready to go soon, but we don't have a timeline for that because there are still some errors with the form that we still need to work out. Does anyone have any questions about this CAT request form? No? All right, well then I'll move on to the next spot on the agenda, which is how to check for OCLC system alerts. So if you use OCLC, you may have noticed that for some reason they seem to be going down quite often. I don't know what's going on with their computer servers, but it seems to happen quite a bit that their connection or even just their website is not working. So how to check the OCLC system alerts? There's a couple different ways. If you come, so from the RSA website, you can go to OCLC training and documentation in that left-hand menu. Then connection. connection client. And there's a link right here that you can go to check these system alerts. Okay, and you see like they have scheduled maintenance, like the previous alerts, and if there was something active, it would be up there. And you can sign up here to receive these system alerts directly to your email, which we do recommend. Because sometimes when their system goes down, this page won't work either. So if it's frustrating, but it happens. And there's also a guide for how to check this. So if you go down to, here we go, how to check system alerts in OCLC Connection, you'll find a guide that gives you instructions on how to sign up for those email alerts. So yeah, is there any questions about connection or OCLC system alerts? All right, well, thank you.
I'll just kind of hover behind it. Hi, this is Jennifer again. I'm going to talk to you about what Alpha Park does when we go into, let's say we look in RSA and there's no record for an item, and then we look in OCLC and we find, but it might be a 3, an M, or a 8 level record, in which looking at the record, it's missing some key information. For example, we always want our items, of course, to have a good title and author, but also the page number and measurement, correct publisher, information like that. And sometimes the OCLC record is just not complete. So we developed a form that, let's see, it's on the bottom of the database committee page that Erica posted a link to, that we fill out with the item in hand. At the top, we put it should go to Eliza or Miranda. And then we type in the title, and if it has introductory pages, the copy that you're seeing, I've actually...
You want to show the form, Jen?
Okay, sure. Let's see, how can I get to it here?
See if you can hit the back button.
Okay.
And then see if you can then scroll up to the top of the page, and there should be a little house in the left corner. So let's go clear to the top of the page.
Okay.
So that little house, and there you go.
There we go.
And then we'll go to the board committees and groups.
Board committees and groups, RSA board committees and groups. And then...
From the next left-hand menu, you'll click on the database management.
There we go. So I'm going to the form right now so you can see it. Let's see. You said it was at the bottom here?
So let's go up a little bit. There we go.
There we go. Okay. Oh. Well, here, I'll bring up the form. Sorry, it's downloading. Okay. So here's an example. We put to Liza or Miranda at the top from Alpha Park, and a lot of times, whichever one of us do it, we'll put our name after that. The title of the item, if they're introductory pages, and if so, what's the last numbered page. Usually those introductory pages are in Roman numerals. Then the last numbered page of the body of the work. We measure the spine. We kind of page through it real fast and look to see if it has any maps or illustrations and if they're in color. Is the item already in workflows? Usually that's not the case. Basically, I put that question on there in case we had a record in workflows that really needed upgraded, that might have been already, was in workflows but was an M. Is there an OCL record that could be updated? What we're talking about today would be yes, and then we put the OCLC number, and then we scan the item just the same as we would an item that had no OCLC record at all and needed cataloging. There are also, I think on that page, a couple examples of, if you go back to the database committee page, of some of the scans that we have done. And yours might actually look better than ours. We have issues with our scanner auto-detecting the sizes of books, so we have to put, like, basically default the biggest. We copy the front cover and the back cover, the last introductory page, that, oh, let's see. There we go. I'm going to bring up bread and jam for Francis.
So go ahead and do a right click and see if you can rotate.
Yeah, there we go. Rotate clockwise. So when we scan the items to send here to Liza or Miranda, we always put the form that we filled out as the first page, and then we scan the book. And we usually just do it as one document. So there's the front cover, the back cover. There's a title page. And sometimes we'll include, if there's something odd about the book, we'll copy that too, just in case they need. I always figure it's better to send them too much information than not enough. I hope that's correct, Liza. And Miranda. And then there's the end of the book. So it's really easy. And then once we have the scan, we put it in an email where we put our library code, which is AP _ and then to Liza or Miranda. And then we usually put the title of the item also in the subject line just for our ease of use later. And then once they have cataloged it, recataloged it, and imported it, then we just can delete, the emails in the file, the scan doc. If for some reason, we always try to check too to make sure that our scans are legible. And if they're not, and they need us to resend something, we rescan all the pages so they get everything at once that they need. Is there anything else I should say about this? And if anybody has any questions, those forms will be on the website and you can look at them. And you can also email me at jennifer@alphapark.org if you needed any advice or wanted any help implementing something like this. Let's see, the next thing on our agenda is RSA OCLC fiscal year 2016 with Erica.
Have you talked, Liza, a little bit about some of the things we do for level 3 and upgrades?
Oh, okay. I was going to show
That works too, yeah.
in workflows what they look like for those people that might not know.
Sorry, you guys. Liza's going to talk a little more about the upgrades for encoding level 3, M, and 8.
Okay, so from our end, let's see. Do we have workflows open here? Yes. Good. When you are searching workflows, you have a new item in your hands, and you're searching workflows, and sometimes you'll look for it using ISBN usually, or title and author. Sometimes it will come up. I can't talk and type at the same time. Sometimes it will come up looking like this. You'll notice that, can they see?
No, they can't.
They can't see that. Okay, good. You'll see this encoding level right here. This is where we're looking for the 3, M, or 8. This one is an encoding level 3, which means it's a very basic abbreviated level record. And I'm sure you've seen these. There's no page numbers, no size, no description, no subject headings. Sometimes there's no author. It's basically very, very hard for anybody to actually look for this book. So when you find this and you want to attach to this record, you can go ahead and attach to the record, but make sure you send us a cataloging request and let us see the scans of your book so that we can upgrade this record to a full record. And but if you do want to attach to the record, that's fine. Just let us know so that we can upgrade it. You can start circulating your item. You can send it through your tech services processing as needed. You don't have to wait on us. The other kind, just to give you an example of the encoding level M, which again I'm sure you've seen. This one is an M. Encoding level M right here. You'll see that it's a capitalized M, not to be mistaken with this bib level M, which means it's a monograph record. That's okay. This is the M we want to look at. And this one has an author. The title's not so great, but there is at least some 500 notes. There aren't any subject headings. So this is a little bit better, but it still can be upgraded. And let me, while I'm in here, show you an 8. Let's see. Eights are usually pre-pubs, which means the record's going to look pretty good. There's your level 8. It's going to have a call number, a title, an author, probably everything it really needs. Usually it's missing this right here, though, a page number and a size. We'd still like to see your scans for these so that we can upgrade it and get that put in there so it's a full record. And I guess that's it. Was there anything else, Erica, that you wanted me to mention?
Don't think so.
Okay.
We're kind of bootstrapped.
We're kind of in a tight spot.
Yeah.
Okay. I will switch on over. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and type it in the chat box at any time, or you can always email us at rsahelp.railslibraries.info, and we will answer.
Okay, and I think too that the main thing is, I know a lot of you are already looking at those encoding levels, but just to continue doing so, that way we can really help keep the database clean for everyone. There was a question in here. Yes, Melissa, there is a report, and this actually is a good question because we're developing some new cataloging reports in Blue Cloud Analytics, the new Circe Dynex reporting tool that RSA staff is using, and we're hoping to start training libraries who are interested on it sometime in the first quarter of 2016. So yes, there is a report, but I'd also like to mention though too, this is something that Alpha Park did some cleanup on their collection. They looked at level 3 and level M records, and they worked with Rhonda here at the RSA to get those records cleaned up. But I want to be careful though and not make it sound like we're asking you to do that. If you have time and you want to do that to get your collection cleaned up, that's great, and we'd be glad to run the reports for you to make that project possible. But we also though from our end are having staff take a look at reports system-wide of level 3 and level M records, and we've made very good progress. Liza is down to just a couple hundred level 3 records. So if you're curious about what's in your collection that has one of those 3 or M or even 8 values, go ahead and send a note to the help desk. We'd be glad to run the report for you, but like I said, we're tackling it from our end too, so don't feel obligated to try and do that cleanup on your end unless like Alpha Park, you have the staff and the time to get it going. Yes, Lori, that's correct. So the person who's importing the record, so if they're doing the search and connection and all that's available is the level 3 or the level M or the level 8. Like Liza mentioned, the record can go ahead and be imported into workflows, but we'd like to see a cataloging request with the scans or with faxes if you're not comfortable scanning. That way the record can be upgraded in OCLC, but like we mentioned, the record can go ahead and be used, but we would like to have it upgraded if we can to get that good description on it. But it should be the person, yes, importing it from OCLC, but you might also come across these in workflows because they are, like the examples Liza showed you, we do have quite a few of these in the database. So if you come across one and you notice it as you're cataloging, report that too, but a lot of times it might be the person importing the record. Okay. Okay, yep. There's no web address for the cataloging form yet, and then those reports we just run on a case-by-case basis. So if you'd like an encoding level report to see 8s in your collection. Those we can run per library, so there's nothing posted for those. And then, like Miranda mentioned, the form isn't ready yet, so we didn't want to post the link there on our site. Okay, all good questions. Thank you. So one thing I wanted to mention, and this seems to change every fiscal year. It seems like we never do it the same every year. So we have a new batch loading schedule. So every month, RSA takes your workflows holdings and we update them in OCLC. We have a translation table that takes your workflows library code and it matches it up with your 3-letter OCLC symbol. And that export that we do just about every month, that's the detail I'm going to tell you here has changed. But that translation table, it makes the connection, no pun intended, between what you've cataloged in workflows, what you've deleted, and then that allows the export process and the batch holdings syncing to happen in OCLC. So anything you've created in workflows that's new, the symbol would be added. And then anything that's been deleted from workflows, OCLC would see your export file from us and say, oh, you deleted that from your local database, so we'll delete that from OCLC, so the two match up. Oh, the agenda. Okay, yeah, let me go back here to that. And I wonder almost if it's saved. Okay, so if I'm here on the database committee page, maybe? That looks weird, doesn't it? Okay. So if I'm here on the home site, I should just go the long way. And then the board committees groups, and then the database management committee. Okay, so if we go down here, and I think next time, if someone could make a note to help me remember, but let's post the agenda next time on the L2 event. Looking back, that probably would have been the good way to do it, so that I know you didn't register on L2, but for the next in-between meeting, we'll post the agenda there. That way you can get to it easily. You can tell we're still working out kinks for this. I'll open a new tab here. So the batch schedule that we're doing this fiscal year, and our fiscal year started July 1st, and it runs through June 30th of 2016. We're updating your holdings each month for you in OCLC, except for May, September, and December. I put those exceptions, those 3 months we're not doing it, in the OCLC training documentation section in connection. I put it in the connection client documentation because I know that's what a lot of you are referring to, is you're doing connection work. So if you go here to the OCLC connection client users guide, there's a section in here about updating your holdings, page 29. So notice it lists those 3 months that are exceptions. And we talked about how it updates additions and deletions for your library in OCLC based on your current workflows holdings. You can update your holdings manually in Connection Client if you want to make the items visible to world share requests sooner than the monthly export and the monthly syncing in OCLC, but you're not required to do that. We have had some discrepancies between holdings that were updated manually and those that were done in batch in OCLC. So we tend to recommend just to let the batch take care of it. But we know some libraries prefer to update those holdings manually to make them available sooner, and that's fine. But just be cognizant if there's any discrepancies and report those to the help desk, because we've been told by our vendor that helps us with this export process that their process isn't perfect. Updating holdings and things can slip through the cracks, especially if things have been manually updated. So again, that's why we're encouraging everyone to rely on the batch load. But I know too, like I said, some of you prefer to update manually, and that's fine. But you might just have to do some manual deletes if something slips through the cracks through that batch update process. Let's see, I think that's it for the update schedule. Do you have any questions about our schedule for this year? It happens seamlessly, so you don't even know it's happening. That's the way it should be. Okay, we're going to play musical chairs again, and I'm going to let Jennifer come back and tell you about brief records and online catalog.
Is RSA cat on here open yet?
Why don't we go back here?
Hi, you guys. I'm going to try to open RSA cat here so we can look at it.
Go back. I think if we just go to the top of the page, we can collapse this if you'd like. You should be able just to type in here, and that should search everybody. If that
Okay, I'm going to look up a book that Erica kindly suggested because she knew that it had some good records and a brief record or two maybe. Pete the Cat, Too Cool for School. We all love Pete the Cat. Let's see. Okay, so you can see, oh, here we go. The top one you can see probably has a pretty good record. It's got the cover there and the author and title and everything really nice. But then when you come down here, this one, I'm assuming this one must be a brief record. It doesn't have the title and it has no information. So this is why it's really important that we get rid of the brief records. An example of something that I could think of that would be really bad if you didn't have the title and the extra information would be a movie like The Descendants, for example, because there was the movie several years ago that had George Clooney in it that takes place in Hawaii, and then there's the new Disney Descendants. And if you had a brief record for something entitled The Descendants, you would have, without the cover, you'd have no idea potentially which one you were getting, because there wouldn't be the summary there or anything. Does anybody have any questions about that? Erica showed the directors this at the last meeting of the RSA users group, so hopefully the directors will have a better understanding of why it's important for us to have really good records too. Did you want to say anything about this one, Erica?
I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I think we might come back to that at the end if there's time, but I think that accurately describes the issue.
Okay. Well, next up is Rhonda.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be using workflows, and since I can't talk and type at the same time, give me just a moment. Oh, let's see, it's not going to do it now. Is it really? There we go. All right. We've edited our procedure for creating on-order brief records. I will be sending this out to the libraries who actually use on-order records, but I wanted to give you an example here at the meeting about what we're talking about when we're asking you to start adding initial articles to your on-order records. The reason we're asking people to add initial articles to their brief records is because it aids in searching in RSA CAT. It doesn't work as well without those initial articles went with a brief record. So here's an example of what we're asking you guys to do for initial articles. As you notice, this one has an author and the in the title. So we're using 1 and a 4 in your indicators, your first and second indicators, because 1 indicates that there's an author, and 4 indicates that there's 4 spaces before the computer is supposed to pay attention to the title. So it says that, hey, there's 3 or 4 spaces there that you have to ignore when you're searching. So it just starts searching as under example instead of the. The same goes for a and an, although a, it would be 2 spaces, and an would be 3. Let me show you what it looks like without an author. All right, here you can see that it uses a 0 for the first indicator because there is no author. All right, it's telling you that your main entry is the title. And then it's saying 4 to skip that so that it doesn't look at the. All right, so as I said, I will be sending out these edited version of the procedure for creating on-order brief records to those libraries who actually use on-order. If you have any questions about this, please just send them to the help desk. Or unless you have any questions right now, you can just ask me. Are there any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so a couple of things just to add on to what Rhonda told you about. So like she emphasized, we're only doing this for on-order brief records. So if you're putting in, remember, we try and encourage you not to put in a brief record for something that is permanent to the collection. But if you're doing that, we're not asking that you put in articles, or I should say filing indicators for those. We're focusing on the on-order brief records because the search discrepancy is the biggest issue for the on-orders. And remember, the greater strategy is to really reduce brief records and to leverage our help to help you do that. So that's why we're focusing on orders for this. So this isn't a change to putting in, we'll call it a regular brief record. This only affects the on orders. And I wanted to show you in the online catalog how this really negatively impacts searching in the online catalog if we don't put in these filing indicators. So there's an example, and I'm not trying to pick on Peoria because again, we didn't used to ask you to do filing indicators. So this example here, it was put in correctly. So the article was not included because we didn't used to ask for that. So it has the, though, in its full title. So if I go to the RSA cat, if I try and do a search for the painted queen, remember in workflows, it doesn't have the. So if I go back here and try and do a search for that, why don't we do a sort by title? I didn't see it, did you guys? So that lack of the, if a patron types in the, and we know they do, just taking, you know, whatever they've seen on Amazon or from their book list newsletter or what they've seen elsewhere, if they put the in, that title's invisible. It's like you don't have it. But if they somehow magically know that we don't put the initial article in, which they would not know, it should come up. So that's why, again, with these on orders, it's crucial that we put in filing indicators, and we'd like your help doing that because we know that the purpose of these on orders is for your patrons to see them and to start getting in line for holds on them. So if they can't find it, it really doesn't do any good to help them get it on hold. What our strategy is for your existing on orders that lack articles, we're going to take a look from RSA side of things at a report of those, and we're going to divide and conquer. So we're going to take care of your existing on orders that currently lack initial articles and filing indicators. So we, like I said, would like your help going forward if you're putting in on orders doing this, but we're not asking that you go back and do that. We'd like to help you make sure that they're done correctly, the ones that are already in there. So does that help clarify somewhat the scope of what this involves? Okay. If you think of a question, go ahead and type it in. But let's go to the next agenda item. And of course, I goofed it up and moved off of that page. So let's go back and take a look at the agenda. Okay, so we're making pretty good progress. So notice the next thing up here is the batch deletion of interlibrary loan brief records. And after that, the 7 strategies. The batch deletion of interlibrary loan brief records, that's something, again, that I feel like is in flux, and I have a recent update to give you. So the scope of this project, and I don't have anything to show for it yet, but we'd like to help you from our end clean up those interlibrary loan brief records that you put in for non-RSA interlibrary loans, whether it's WorldShare or Share Illinois. We'd like to have a process in place. And right now, Cersei Dynex just delivered to us a custom workflows report that we would run from our end. I'm thinking monthly, probably towards the beginning of each month, but I'd like to have it run on the 5th. That way you can still get statistics on your interlibrary loans, but that way too we can clean them out after your end of the month reports have run. So this report, once it's up and running, it'll run ideally on the 5th of each month. And what it'll do, and I have an example here that we can look at of an item that if this report works correctly, it should clean it out for us. So let me get to that. You know what? I think I'm going to do a title search. These interlibrary loan items sometimes have long barcodes. I bet you've seen that from your end. So why don't we just do a title search limited to the library? So notice here, this is an interlibrary loan brief record. There's not much to it that the Filger Public Library in Minonk put in. And notice it's been in here quite a while. So it was created really almost a year ago. So what our custom report will do, it's going to look to see if you've assigned one of these ILL item types or the ILL home location or a combination of either code. And it's going to notice if it's not checked out. So this one just says it's there, like it's on the shelf. It can't have any bills. It can't have any copy level holds. It can't have any title level holds. And if it meets those criteria, the report will remove it from workflows. So this would clean out some of these things that are living in the database and no longer needed. A couple things to note though, and again, we haven't tested this yet, so I'm saying this is how it should work, but I don't have verification it does work this way. But if an item has bills, remember in workflows it was a recent enhancement where you can delete an item that has bills attached to it and it moves the bill to the patron's record, but it can still clean out the item. This report is supposed to do the same thing. So if there's an interlibrary loan that has a bill, what we're told, and again, we haven't tested though, is that bill will move to the patron's record, and the interlibrary loan item, if it meets those criteria we just went over, can still be cleaned out. So that's encouraging that things with bills can be part of this removal process. The other thing to keep in mind, and this is where I'm going to need your help, and they'll post here on the listserv too, soon after we complete the testing of this report on our end. But if your library reuses interlibrary loan brief records, I heard from Eureka Public, Lilliam Evans Library District, and Peoria Public soon after we were talking about this, I think at a users group maybe earlier this fall. Those libraries, I understand, reuse interlibrary loan brief records, so it's almost like a placeholder record that's continuously used whenever a non-RSA interlibrary loan item arrives at the library and needs to check out. So if you have those placeholder type of records that you want to stay in the system and you don't want our automated process to clean them out, the report has an exclusionary criteria on it where we can have it exclude member libraries based on your workflows code. So Eureka, Lilliam Evans, and Peoria, they're already configured in the report to tell it stop, don't delete interlibrary loans for this item. But I have a feeling there's probably more of you out there that are using those placeholder type records. So we'd like to hear from you if that's the case. But like I said too, I do plan to do a listserv post once we've tested it and we know that this works as it should. And the testing will be done on a server that is not affecting your live collection. So as we take a look at this internally, we're not going to be using your collection right now. We're going to be using a copy of workflows to do the testing. Does anyone have any questions about that? So we want to try and streamline some of these tasks that I know are eating up staff time that really could be spent doing something else that really requires manual intervention. So we'd really like to automate some of these tasks and relieve some of the burden on your end. Okay. I'm going to keep this tab open. So notice on here, the next thing is the 7 strategies for reducing brief records. This might be a little bit of review. I know we've talked about this, some of the strategies at least at other meetings, but I started to formulate this into a document, and I'd like your feedback too if your library is doing something else to cut back on brief records. This document, I'd like to see it as an organic document that keeps growing. It's not necessarily finished right now. So if you have other strategies you're using, I'd love to hear them. So feel free to reach out to me. So let me show you where the 7 strategies guide is posted on the RSA website. So if I'm on the home page and I go to workflows, documentation, and training, and then cataloging, and then cheat sheets. Okay, so for now, a lot of these documents that are supporting our restructured cataloging operations, they're posted at the top of this cheat sheets page, but I know it's not the best place for them. So we'll reorganize, and that'll probably be a topic for a future database meeting, is how we've shuffled things around. But for now, the 7 strategies are posted here at the top of the cheat sheets page. So we'll open that to take a look. Okay, some of this we've even talked about in this meeting, so I'll try not to beat a dead horse, so to speak. But so this first example, or first strategy, I should say, remember, try not to attach your item to an existing brief record. I know they're in there, and I know you come across them as you're cataloging, but just be sure for each item you enter, you're taking a good close look at that bibliographic tab and making sure it doesn't look similar to this with that minimal description. If you see that minimal description, you can go ahead and attach to it, but remember, we want scans submitted or faxes. That way you can help us ensure this record becomes a full descriptive record to help you and your patrons search it and know what the content of it is. So that's the first strategy, is watch out for existing brief records. That way you don't add to your existing collection of them. And I know we've talked about this next one too. So if you can't find an existing record in workflows or connection, if your library is using connection, remember, try not to do a new brief record. We'd like to see a cataloging request submitted to us. And this I know we talked about earlier, so I won't go too much more into it, but we did put the procedure here, and remember that's what the form will ultimately replace. So leverage our help if you can't find it in workflows or connection. We're glad to help you. This next one, try and catalog magazines on OCLC records. We're noticing in our database that quite a few magazines are being put on brief records that really have full OCLC records in the database. If it's a local decision, maybe you have branches and they put in magazines on brief records. That's the way it's done. I would recommend, if you're doing that, to have Wendy help you get a report every month that tells you the current state of your magazines, what's in workflows. That way you can easily track them and then delete them when you no longer need them. So that's strategy number 3, is to keep a close eye on magazines if you're putting them on brief records. This kind of goes into step number 4, or I should say strategy number 4, and this actually works well with those cataloging conference calls I'm starting to do with libraries. That way I can help you transition to the new structure. But we're going to recommend, and when we talk during our cataloging call with your libraries, that you start to get a report. I'm recommending on a monthly basis, and this is a project Rhonda's helping me with too, is libraries complete photo visits, which is a strategy further down. But we're starting to recommend that libraries get reports on a monthly basis that track either all of the brief records in your collection or those brief records that were attached to or created in the last 30 days. So the 30 days versus the complete brief record report every month, that'll be your preference to decide what will work best for you. But like I said, when I know we talk, you and your libraries, to transition you to the new structure, I know that we'll get you signed up too at that point for one of these reports. And the report is pretty neat because it comes from that new Blue Cloud interface, and it has a very good output. Kendall and Rhonda have worked to get the output what it needs to be, so it has helpful information about dates, item categories. That way you can really see the state of your brief records and keep an eye on them, and you'll notice submit cataloging requests or maybe delete too if they're no longer needed. So brief record reports coming soon to your library, but like I said, if you'd like to get one sooner, reach out to Wendy and she can get you subscribed to that. Now, strategy number 5 is similar. So remember, Rhonda is glad to prepare brief record reports for you. So if you'd like to take a look at your brief records, especially if you're thinking about a photo visit, to have items recataloged on OCLC records, we always recommend before those visits, or even if you just want an idea where you are with brief records, to reach out to Rhonda so she can prepare a report for you, and that way you can take a look at brief records, think about submitting requests, or maybe doing some deleting or getting ready for that photo visit. So the 6th strategy, consider submitting those unique local materials to the Cataloging Maintenance Center. I touched base with Vince Andrzejewski, the CMC contact last week, and he said the turnaround time is currently, it can be 2 weeks to 2 months depending on the format. So if it's microfilm or some kind of non-book format, he said it tends to take on the longer side. But remember, the CMC is here to help with those special collections cataloging. If you're concerned about the turnaround time, what we're recommending is you can put it in as a brief record, and then when you're ready to send it to the CMC, we can ensure your brief record replaces when that record is ready. And Rhonda even can help you put in those brief records. So if you feel like you've got quite a few local items and you want them put in, but maybe you don't have the staff or the time to do it, Rhonda can help you do that. So just send a note to the help desk if you'd like her help with that. And I know the photo visits we've talked about at previous meetings, but remember that's also a very good strategy to keep your brief records in check. And remember too, and this is something that maybe we haven't emphasized enough, but these photo visits, think of it as it's a one-time only visit. So once we visit your library, Liza and Miranda are conducting these visits this fall and will continue to do so in the coming months. We'd like to have you, though, remember getting that monthly brief record report. That way you can continue to keep your collection in good shape after the photo visit, and really keep an eye on what's being attached as brief records and what's being cataloged as brief records, because this brief record cleanup, it's a partnership between you and between us. So we're glad to do our part, but we'd like your help too, making sure your collection stays in good shape after that photo visit. Does anyone have any questions about these strategies? Does anyone have anything else they do to try and keep brief records under control? No? Okay. I have a few quick hitters, and I did schedule this meeting until 11:15, so we'll keep going here for a few more minutes, but if you need to leave, I understand. So a few other things here under the cataloging and database managers update. This system up-down monitor, I know this has been mentioned a few different times, but I thought we would take a look here at that. This is something that actually came out of the visit Martha James and I did to the SEO consortium in Ohio this past summer. They had a really cool system up-down monitor on their library support staff site. So we started talking and they gave us some pointers to get started with our own. So notice up here in the banner of any of the library staff support site pages, here it is. Maybe. I think I opened it twice. That's okay. So notice here, green, everything's functioning normal. Notice here, though, these little percentages, they're not 100% perfect, and that has to do with the scheduled downtime every night in the middle of the night. So these numbers will probably never be 100% just because there is some scheduled downtime. But during the day, you should see this set to green. So that's always helpful. If you think there might be an issue with your workflows or with your RSA CAT and you're not sure if it's on your end or ours, you can always check this page first. And when you call us needing troubleshooting help with a connection, we might have you check it too together with us. So just keep this page in mind that it's here, easily accessible, and you can click on it anytime you're having trouble. If you're noticing, though, that it's green and you're still having trouble, I would reach out to your internet service provider to see if there might be trouble with your internet. Otherwise, though, if it's down, if it's red, we would try and send a note to the listserv. That way you would know it's on our end and not yours. Do you have any questions about the system up-down monitor? Okay, this RSA Day for public libraries, this actually is, this meeting, I'm glad that we have it when we did, because at the users group meeting last week, a date was announced for this. So it's going to be Tuesday, March 8th, 2016, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Peoria Public Library North Branch. It works out because the PPL North Branch is closed on Tuesdays, and they generously offered to let us use the space for the meeting. So how this will work, and this was brainstormed at the users group meeting last week, RSA will treat you to snacks and lunch. Phil Lanzini, the library attorney, will do a presentation in the morning. And then in the afternoon, Kendall's organizing an RSA day for Public Libraries Committee to help draft topics. So we'd like the topics to be presented by you. We'll, of course, as RSA staff, have a Q&A table, so we're glad to answer your questions too. But we'd like this day to really reflect what you want it to be. So like I said, Kendall is looking for volunteers for that committee to help design the topics. So if you'd like to join the committee, or even if you just have an idea, go ahead and share it with Kendall. And I think Jenny Severe at the Peoria Public Library, and I think maybe Barbara Love from Kewanee, I think they might be on that committee too, so they could probably take suggestions. So this day will be for any staff from the library that you think would benefit from going. So again, Tuesday, March 8th, from 10 to 3 at the North Branch. Okay, the Workflows 3.5 upgrade. I don't have too much to tell you about this other than, oh good, yeah, thank you, Barbara. Yeah, I was hoping I remembered correctly that you were on that committee. Good, yeah, so share ideas with Barbara too, that way we can make it a good day. So the Workflows 3.5 upgrade, like I said, not too much new here, other than we're thinking of January, Martin Luther King Day, January 18th, 2016.
Now and Martin Luther King.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Rhonda. So no later, we'll say, than January 18th, 2016. There's still some bugs in this newest Workflows upgrade, and Kendall always jokes, and he's right. We need to let some other libraries and some other consortia find those bugs before we jump on and do the upgrade. So we're waiting it out. And one thing I plan to do at the January meeting, which we'll talk about here soon, I plan to show some enhancements from Workflows 3.5, and hopefully I'll have some release notes for you, because there are a few helpful changes for cataloging, but I think it makes more sense to talk about that closer to the actual upgrade or afterwards, depending on when we do it. Okay, a few things here for Rails and the ISL, the State Library. The Rails Continuing Education Archives have been redesigned, and I think it's a great look that they have now. So on the RSA website, we have a link in the banner, not far from the System Up-Down monitor, for Rails. So notice here under Services, there's a CE Archives link. And I know Louise Savela, the Continuing Education Specialist at Rails, she plans to do a presentation on this at the next users group meeting. I think that's in February. So if you'd like to hear more about the ins and outs of the CE Archives, try and join us in February for that users group where Louise joins us. But notice here they have a recently added. And down here, this is the part that I thought was pretty neat, because you can filter based on category. So if I go to cataloging, looks kind of weird, maybe based on my browser, but notice once I click cataloging and leave the date open-ended, it returns a good list of all these webinars that they've archived. So just keep that in mind if maybe you missed a webinar, or you just want to do maybe an activity with cataloging staff or technical services staff, and you're looking for something professional development related to do. So notice here, like I said, that search limit works pretty well. And they do, for a lot of these, you don't even need the login in order to watch it. For some of them you might, and remember that would be your library learning account. Do you have any questions about the Rails CE archives? Okay. This next thing, the delayed transition to OCLC Discovery Services. Virtual show of hands if anybody attended earlier this week. There was an OCLC program that was streamed from the Rails Burr Ridge office. It had Dawn Tortorella as the presenter. She talked a little bit about discovery services. Remember, this is the First Search replacement. And the thing to keep in mind is that First Search is still going to be a viable platform until sometime late in 2016. So originally OCLC was saying Discovery Services was going to become that primary patron interface for WorldCat this year, but they've stretched out the migration timeline, so now Discovery Services, it's available and you might already be using it, but First Search is not going away until next year. I do think this is relevant to catalogers, because if you maintain your local holdings, your periodicals, in OCLC, in the past, we've always used First Search to find those holdings, and now we'll need to think about using Discovery Services. And it's a very rich staff search in Discovery Services, so I know it'll be hopefully an easy transition, but that's something that if you're maintaining serials, we'll need to think about moving you over to using Discovery Services once First Search has sunsetted. That way you can still find those magazine holdings. Okay, the last thing here, the State Library has partnered with the Digital Public Library of America for a service hub. The Digital Public Library of America, you might have looked at it before, but it's neat because it's the largest single free virtual library of digitized collections, and they're created by libraries, museums, other organizations. So the State Library has kind of ramped up their partnership with the Digital Public Library, and we're now a service hub. So that means if you have anything that was digitized as part of the Illinois Digital Archives project, that is going to be added to the Digital Public Library of America. And one thing that was mentioned at ILA last month, the State Library is looking to do some digitization grants to help libraries get unique materials digitized that maybe weren't part of that Illinois Digital Archives project that could be included in this service hub. So just be on the lookout in the Illinois State Library e-news for more information about digital imaging grants. But as you might expect, like so many things, we need a state budget first, though, before we can think about doing grants. But I could tell from that session at ILA that the State Library very much wants to push ahead with this project, so I'm hopeful there'll be some form of grant at some point that could potentially help libraries get this very unique content digitized for the Digital Public Library of America. Okay, before I turn it back over to Jennifer to tell us the next meeting date, does anyone have any final questions? We are recording this, so we're going to try and get the recording posted in the next week or two on the committee page. That way, if you'd like to come back to something or share it with additional staff who couldn't join us today, we'll be sure to get that posted. That way you can take a listen to it at your convenience. Okay, let's play musical chairs one last time.
Hi everybody, this is Jennifer again. Our next database committee meeting will be Thursday, January 14th here at Rails from 9:30 to 12. You can attend in person or you can attend virtually. I appreciate everybody who was able to come today for your attendance and your patience with our little technical issues and everything. If nobody has anything to add, then our meeting is adjourned.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone.
We'll go ahead and mute that.